right, well, I'm ready to go if everybody else is. Again, thank you for your patience. The first part of the presentation I'm going to be leading, and then Eric's going to take over, and we'll go ahead and get started. So this is Media Outreach 101, and I am Meryl Clark. So I have a background in both newspapers and public relations. I graduated from Michigan University in 2008, and I do a lot of media outreach in my current role. I work in the fenestration and glazing industry, which is a fancy way of saying windows and doors. But a lot of the things that I do in my current role at my company can translate to any kind of industry, and that includes activism. So I've really enjoyed being able to apply some of my skills to the work that Indivisible MOD has been doing since it began. Eric, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Sure, yeah. I'm Eric Engel, and I am a Chief Union Steward for National Treasury Employees Union Chapter 190.
No longer exists.
Essentially, yeah, we still exist. Some don't, but we don't have an enforceable contract. And I've been a board president of Mid-Ohio Valley Climate Action for 10 years, which is a local nonprofit climate and environmental organization. And I'm just happy to be here tonight. I really, the only reason I'm here tonight presenting with Meryl is I submit and have submitted for many years a lot of op-eds and letters to the editor, to the Parkersburg News and Sentinel and to the Charleston Gazette Mail. And I'm also a Substack writer since September of 2023, and I've published 82 of those in that time. So I write a lot and get it submitted and published a lot. And I just wanted to go over some things tonight about, the how to do that and motivators and influencing and that sort of thing. So thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, here is a little bit of our agenda today. So we're going to start out with some Journalism 101, and then we'll go into the elements of what makes a press release, the information that you need to include. Then we'll get into the do's and don'ts of working with reporters and editors. So there can be a little bit of a delicate dance to that. And then we'll conclude with Eric's presentation or information about how to write and submit a killer letter to the editor, or an op-ed, which is what we call an opinion piece. So I don't know if you are aware, but journalism is basically the only profession that is specifically called out and protected in the U.S. Constitution. Over time, freedom of the press has been tried and tested through various court cases, as well as libel laws in different jurisdictions. And there is a high burden of proof before publication, as there, of course, should be. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah,
I didn't think about the door that time.
So the first thing I'm going to get into with Journalism 101 is what a lead is. So a lead is the intro paragraph of any news article, or in our case, any press release. So it does its best to answer these 6 basic questions as succinctly as possible. So if you took like an English or Comp 101 class at any point, think of the lead as your essay's topic sentence. It's the same kind of thing. So you want to cover the who, what, when, where, and why, and also how. I wish that how could start with the W's. We could have the 6 W's of journalism. But so this is the framework used by many journalists to help them communicate the key details of a story effectively. By following this checklist, you can make sure that the most relevant information is included in that first sentence of an article. Next up, we have the idea of the inverted pyramid, which is how journalists tend to structure a story. And if you've got the 5 W's and the 1 H in your lead, you can move on to the rest. So the body of your story is the bulk of the article. You'll probably want something in here that's at least 1 quote. In the parameters that we're talking about, it's a press release about an upcoming protest that is being hosted by Indivisible MOV. So you would probably quote one of the steering committee leaders or whoever is the best point of contact for that upcoming event. And quotes are where you can really add some color to a press release, because for the most part, your press release is information only. You want logistics, you want to answer the main questions and things like that. But to really motivate and get people engaged and interested in why they should attend, that's where you can use a quote to your real advantage. So while you can't have an opinion in the body of what you're writing for your press release, you can have an opinion within the parameters of a quote. So if it's attributed to somebody, then an opinion can make its way into a press release or an article. And then I've got a little bit of information here, just again, because this is Journalism 101. So specifically for news articles, it is critical to capture opposing and varied points of views in your article, no matter what the topic is. That said, that is where public relations differs. With PR, you have a set agenda, and you are trying to further that agenda. So that is where the two very much differ. So journalism, unbiased, lots of viewpoints, different sources, variety of sources. Public relations, typically one source, one point of view. So that, yeah, just keep that in mind. PR is one-sided, but you also need to remember that editors and reporters are obligated to seek comments from those who may oppose you or oppose your agenda. All that said, so far with our coverage, that has not really been the case. Like, we've gotten a lot of really good press. I'm going to show you some examples later. But if that comes up down the road, which we don't really know what the future is going to hold, try to be understanding if maybe our press release gets picked up, but some stuff gets added to it that we would not have chosen. But that is the right, if not duty, of the news publication that we send these to. And then also that touches on what Eric is going to talk about, which is how an opinion piece is very different from a news article. So we can talk about that too. All right, so once you have the body of your press release, you can add the tail, which is just what it sounds like. That is the end, where you wrap it up with any other necessary background information that the reader or the editor may need to add context. So I always end Indivisible MOV's press releases with a sentence about our next event, our next monthly meeting, and how readers can find us online. So it's just boilerplate language at the end of every press release that stays the same, more or less. We'll take a closer look at that when we break down the elements of a press release, which is right now. So I have a saved template for Indivisible MOV press releases, and the highlighted sections that you see here always change and need updated. The rest of it is on an as-needed basis, such as information about our next day of action, whenever that's available. And you'll see here at the bottom that there are 3 pound signs or hashtags at the bottom, and that is just an industry trade thing where that signifies the end of the news release. So if you have information at the bottom that might be about any artwork or photos that you provided, that goes down under that, just to make sure that it's very clear where the news release ends. Let's talk about what makes a successful press release. So we're getting to some best practices.
We're getting these slides, are we?
I'm sorry?
We will get these slides?
Yes.
Because I can't keep
No, yeah, I wish this screen was a little bit bigger. Okay, so the first thing that makes a press release successful is timing. This is a really big one. So as you know, in our line of work, sometimes protests get scheduled even on the national level within a matter of days. And that is super impressive that can get rolled out so quickly, but it does present a challenge for informing local media. When possible, for example, with the Labor Day protests that we're having, those were planned well in advance, and so you kind of have a little bit more of a buffer. So it's really great to give at least 1 week's notice, if not 2. Editors just really like to know what they have lined up in terms of their content as well in advance as possible. And the second thing that makes a quality press release, a successful press release, is quality. So you want to make sure you include all necessary information. You don't want a reporter or editor to have to come back to you for something that you forgot, because that significantly decreases your chances of it getting picked up. If they've got everything they need, they don't need to reach out to you and follow up, it is a lot more likely that it is going to run as quickly as possible. One thing that I learned in doing this training, I reached out to the News and Sentinel to get some advice, which I'm going to share in a minute here. But one thing that they said was that they are a lot more likely to run something that we send them, like a press release, if it includes a photo, because they need to have art. Newspapers and magazines have what they call like stock images or photos on file. So they probably at this point have several file photos of our organization just from previous events and coverage that we've sent them, but they've already used them. So they always want like a new one that hasn't been printed yet or ran online yet. So, and that, they weren't kidding. Like, we've had some pretty good success ever since we started sending photos along with the press releases. Okay, next up, brevity is important. So keep it short, let your quotes give your press release color, and leave the rest just for the facts. The fourth thing is relevancy. So because we are part of a national organization, we are a local chapter. I'm not sure if that's the correct terminology for that. Yeah,
I'd say local chapter.
Okay. Yeah. It's really great to try to tie national news stories back to West Virginia, back to Ohio, ideally back to Washington County, back to Wood County. That's not always possible, but when we talked about, I believe it was the Care Not Cuts protest that was outside Camden Clark, for that press release, we included some stuff about how those Medicaid cuts were going to hit those respective states. And it's just that you're giving these editors more of a reason to run your stuff, because that's where the News and Sentinel is covering. They're covering West Virginia. Marietta Times is covering Ohio. Again, as local as you can make it, the better, but we don't always have the stats available for Wood County and Washington County specifically when it comes to these issues. Okay, so I guess the bottom line is think locally. Again, so I reached out to the News and Sentinel to try to get some information and advice for this training, and this was what Christina Meyer, the editor-in-chief of the News and Sentinel, said. So I have found this really helpful because the day of, I think I'm going to get into this example later, this is a little bit of a spoiler, but the day of the Fight the Trump Takeover protest that was held on August 16th in Mineral Wells, it was a weekend, and I wasn't really sure if Christina Meyer would see it. So I contacted Evan Bevins directly on her recommendation with this advice, and what I sent to him ran on Monday morning. It was great. Yeah, so I'll show you that in a minute here. But yeah, especially if you just send something kind of generic to the News and Sentinel email, follow up with like an actual person if you have a contact at that organization. I've been running into that a little bit with WTAP. But yeah, so another piece of advice that Christina Meyer had is, again, about user-submitted content, which was very surprising to me because I did not think that they would take something that their reporter had not independently worked on, but that was not the case. So I am, by all means, going to take advantage of that now and in the future. So yeah, they will take user-submitted content. You just have to, again, if you're going to submit a more article-style piece for them, I would be happy to help you, but that is a little more complicated because you have to have details like someone's full name, where they live, and if you possibly can get it their age, but that's not, of the three, that's the least important. But there's more parameters that make it a little more complicated. But again, if you're interested in that, talk to me after. I'll work with you on that. So, yeah, so with this example here, you can see kind of the result of being sure to send a photo and all the relevant information. This is a news clipping from after the Memorial Day protest. So they did not, I don't think that they did any coverage of that in advance of that event, but they did let us cover it after the fact. And that was something I think I worked on with Kim, where Kim had a write-up, so I kind of consolidated that, but then sent in a photo. And then, Brian, do you know if this is one of yours, this photo? Do you remember?
I do not believe so.
Okay. I think it just says photo provided by Indivisible MOB, but like that was enough for them to run with it, so
It was a
that
drone.
was really great.
It was a drone photo, actually.
A drone photo?
Got it. Okay, and then yeah, along those lines, they will give photo credit if we request it. So I think it was like an event a few weeks after that one that Brian got some photos at the Care Not Cuts protest, and I think this was promoting an event that wasn't really related to that specific topic, but they still used that photo because it was like, we provided it to them, we had the information of who took it and what event it was from, so they were able to run that. And then, yeah, here's just some other clippings. Like, we've had a lot of success in a short amount of time. Yeah, we had early success, I noticed, with WTAP coverage, but we're at a little bit of a disadvantage in that area because the reporter that I typically send stuff to does not work weekends, and that is when a lot of our events happen. So, but he's been very, like, he's been supportive in the sense of, like, you know, keep sending me stuff, but there's not really a guarantee that it's going to get covered. I have been carrying out a plan to try to entice WTAP to pick up coverage of some of our protests after the fact, but so far I have not been successful. I'll get into that in a minute here. So this is what I'm talking about. I did a bunch of interviews at the Fight the Trump Takeover event in Mineral Wells. I interviewed some of our leaders, you can see Kim here, and some of the protesters there who had showed up, and they were very kind with me in sharing their thoughts and their names and their locations, so I had all of the information that WTAP would have needed if they had taken me up on this footage. That said, they did not. I am going to keep trying. I plan to cover the Labor Day protests in the same way that I did with this one. Send the package to them, hope it makes the weekend news, but my expectations are low. That said, I'm still happy with it because, like I said, the News and Sentinel covered that protest with, like, I used the same quotes from this video footage that I got, wrote an article using them, and that ran. So, like, that got eyes on it, even if the video itself didn't on WTAP. And then I just went ahead, I edited it myself, I put it on our social media platforms, and just kind of let it take its course.
She did a very good job on the clip she edited. It looks professional.
Oh, that's very kind of you. I need to get a gimbal like what you've got, so.
Trish gave it to me.
Hey, all right. Good to know. Well, thank you. So yeah, I guess that's just, you know, take away from this case study that even if something doesn't get picked up as you might hope, you can give it new life in a different venue. Okay, so sometimes if you do a really great job promoting an event in advance, you might get surprised with some unsolicited media attention. This is a good problem to have. We recently had the good luck of getting some media attention from Mountain State Spotlight, a statewide outlet. They drove up from Charleston to talk to our group outside of the Riley Moore protest here at the library. And they interviewed Trish, and she did a great job, and it was like a really good article that got into the fact that our reps and senators here in West Virginia are truly failing us by not holding town halls. They had a great follow-up this week. I don't know if you saw it. But anyway, that's a side tangent. I'll get into that later. But yeah, so I think that reporter came up to that event because we promoted those protests. And that was a quick turnaround too. Like, we didn't find out about those mobile office hours until I think a week before they took place. But we got on top of it and promoted them, and then I think that was the result of that, was that article. Okay, so we've heard from an editor here locally. Now I want to get into some advice from the public relations side of things and how to work successfully with editors and reporters. So the advice that I'm going to give you is courtesy of a woman named Heather West. She works in the window and door industry, so I know her from my day job, but she is sympathetic to our cause, and she had some really great advice that, again, carries over across industries. And I just want to touch on, this was her first, and I think maybe most important piece of advice, and that is to not be misleading with the media, because that can really tarnish your credibility. They're not going to want to work with you if they feel like they can't trust you. And I kind of thought of a local example of that. Like, you guys remember Parkersburg Fest from a couple of weeks ago? Okay, yeah, I feel like that is an example of an event, like it was clearly an evangelical event that was being marketed and promoted in such a way that completely obscured that fact. And so they lost credibility with a lot of people locally just right off the bat because people could see through that. So just keep Parkersburg Fest in mind when working with the media. All right, first off, we have some do's of media outreach, and I'm just going to go through these because I know it's a little small on the screen. So do be polite and respectful of their time. Keep your pitches brief. Do state why a story is relevant to the readers. Include useful data and statistics when possible. Do include artwork. You're going to want high resolution photos for print media, video for television. And then next we have do stick with email. This kind of depends. Like, it does seem to be that journalists prefer email overall, but they may specify like, oh, just text me, and like then that's fine. That can be an avenue that's acceptable to continue contacting them. Do your research and only send materials that are relevant to the outlet's audience or to a specific journalist beat. And then the last one, spokespeople should be well prepared for live interviews. Try to keep it to 3 key points, and do not assume that you can keep something off of the record, because that's kind of a quagmire. So if you get a question and you are not sure if you want to answer and you want to give some background information without giving a full answer, I would advise you to instead simply say no comments. As far as our don'ts, do not share a reporter's contact information without their permission. It might be tempting if you're talking to somebody else in the group and they say like, oh, like I want to cover this thing, or I want to write something about XYZ. You might say like, oh, I know somebody at such and such, like here, let me give you their information. Like that is fine as long as you ask that reporter first. So that is step 1. And then next, do not spam journalists with irrelevant news or pitches. They will block you. Just think about how annoying those spam texts are, and try to keep away from sounding like a spam text. And third, this was something interesting that I hadn't put a whole lot of thought into, but Heather West mentioned advising not using AI. Apparently, yeah, like, I guess the majority of journalists, or at least the ones that she is working with, are opposed to, or at least remain suspicious of AI-generated content. So something to think about. And then we touched on this a little bit, but one other big thing to consider about media outreach that is specific to our group. If you live in West Virginia, it might be easy to forget that this group serves Ohio too. And if you live in Ohio, you might forget that we're also covering West Virginia. So it is, I feel like it is critical that we cover both, and preferably in equal measure. And I know that can be tough because if you live in one, you're keyed into one. I get it. But yeah, just try to keep that in mind in terms of coverage. Ideally, you want coverage of an event before and after, but it's unlikely you're going to get both. If you don't see coverage in advance, getting the word out about something, try submitting a write-up of it after the fact. So all is not lost. You can still get coverage after the fact. And like I said, I did that after the Fight the Trump Takeover protest, and News and Sentinel ran what I sent them with minimal edits. And there were like 6 people quoted in that. We looked really good. It was a good piece. Okay, before I hand it off to Eric, does anybody have any questions? All right, anything in the chat?
No.
Okay, all right, Eric, you ready to take it away?
Sure. Thank you. That was